Hi, I'm David. Thanks for stopping by prepare911.com. Today we're going to talk about protecting your data with portable encryption. Come on, let's give it a try.
During turbulent times, you step into the fray to protect yourself and those you love. Go to prepare911.com for more information.
Not letting your information fall into someone else's hands is very important. And you protect your information when you put that information into electronic form with encryption. There are a couple of different types of encryption that you can use to protect your information. If you watched one of my earlier videos on the preparedness bottle, I talked about having a thumb drive with a small keypad on the outside that you would input in an encryption code, and it would encrypt everything on the thumb drive. Those thumb drives, frankly, can be pretty expensive. So how do we make sure that you and I can protect our data without having to invest in some expensive hardware? The way you do that is simply with a software encryption program. And today we're going to be talking about one called Veracrypt. What Veracrypt does is it lets you create a single encrypted container that holds all of your data, and that container itself is encrypted and requires a passcode and the Veracrypt software in order to open up. This is very robust encryption. So what type of information might you want to encrypt? Let's say that you had your small bug out bottle, and inside of there was going to be a USB thumb drive. You might put copies of your passports, pictures of all your family members, pictures of all of your contents of your home. You could also scan copies of your driver's license, marriage certificate, any other important document. You may have scanned copies of your life insurance policy, or your homeowner's insurance policy, or maybe your renter's policy. So in case your home is broken into or is burglarized, you will have all the information that you need contained inside the USB thumb drive. But what happens if that thumb drive gets in the wrong hands? That's where encryption comes in. So right now we're at the Veracrypt homepage, and essentially you'll notice it is veracrypt.fr. That means that this program is, the website is hosted out of France, and it was actually based upon an older program called TrueCrypt that's no longer available. And as I understand it, some of the developers on TrueCrypt moved over and started Veracrypt when the TrueCrypt project was no longer supported. So you'll notice it allows you to create a virtual encrypted disk. That is what we're going to do in order to store our private and confidential documents inside of. It also allows you to encrypt an entire hard drive, USB drive. You can actually encrypt the partition or the entire hard drive for when the Windows operating system is installed, so that it requires that you insert a password in order for the OS to get started and to boot completely up. We're not going to do any of those features. They're going to be the subject of a future video, but right now we're going to focus on creating this virtual encrypted disk. Frankly, if it was me and I wanted to encrypt the entire hard drive, I would probably choose BitLocker as opposed to Veracrypt, just because it's built into the operating system. BitLocker is a great piece of encryption software that's widely supported and available on most Microsoft platforms. It provides very good, robust protection and encryption. But in this video, we're going to talk about how to create a virtual encrypted container. So what you'll do is you'll click on Downloads. I'll mention that you don't want to download this software from any sort of file sharing website or software sharing website. Frequently those sites embed adware into the software. That's how they make their money. So I would discourage you from doing that. Make sure you go to veracrypt.fr in order to get the actual executable and download files from the manufacturer. What I also like about Veracrypt is, unlike BitLocker, Veracrypt is supported on Mac. So if you create a file on a Mac hard drive, a virtual encrypted disk, you can move that between your Mac hard drive and a Windows hard drive, and it will work just fine. The actual encrypted file will work just fine. There won't be any issues with it. So we're going to assume that you've already clicked here. There'll be a number of things you're going to need to click next on. Everybody that's installed software is very familiar with those types of windows. So once you actually do that, it's going to place an icon. You're going to be required to reboot. It's going to place an icon on your computer system, and you're going to double click on it to launch Veracrypt. Now you'll notice this screen might seem a touch intimidating in the very beginning, and let me sort of explain to you the different parts of it so that it doesn't feel kind of a little bit overwhelming. So you'll notice, just like all Windows or many Windows programs, it has got a series of drop-down menus that allow you to pick things. Next is this very large window, and you'll notice this has drive A, B, there's no C, D, there's no E, but this is simply the drive letters that are available to be assigned as a virtual encrypted volume. You have a button to create an encrypted volume, and once you have created an encrypted volume, this next area where it says volume, that's where you point to the file, and then you have some buttons down here to mount them. If you have a number of files already on here, you can automatically mount all the files. Or if you wanted to dismount everything, let's say you had 3 or 4 or 5 encrypted volumes up all at once, because you were moving information from one area to the next, that would be a way that you could close and dismount all those files. So think of this very similar to a USB thumb drive. When you attach it, it's going to get a drive letter, and it's going to be placed on your computer. Veracrypt functions and is going to look to the operating system just like a thumb drive is going to look to the operating system. And I'm speaking at a higher level for that. I know that that's not exactly technically correct underneath the hood. I get that. I'm just trying to explain the concept. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose or highlight one of these, and then we're going to say create volume. So you have a couple of different options. You can create an encrypted container. That's what we're going to use. You'll notice that's recommended for inexperienced users. I've been using encryption software for a long time, and this is the option that I choose most of the time. Like I said, if I was going to encrypt another entire drive on a Windows system or the entire OS, I would use BitLocker as opposed to Veracrypt. But for the reason I've explained, just for portability, it's going to create a file that I can then send around to different people. I can upload that to a file sharing site. I can upload that to OneDrive, Dropbox, anything in the cloud, and data placed inside that encrypted container is not going to be readable by anybody else. So I'm going to say create an encrypted container. Next, just going to do a standard Veracrypt volume. It does have some features to where you can have a hidden Veracrypt volume, kind of a more advanced feature that we may or may not discuss in a future video. But for this one, since we're just getting you introduced to Veracrypt, we're going to choose standard Veracrypt volume. Next, it's going to ask, where do you want to put it? So what you're going to do is this is going to say, where do you want to put your Veracrypt file and what do you want to call it? So I'm going to call this, for example, secured, because I want all of my information to be secured inside of here. You can choose to give it a file extension if you want. Some people do that. It makes auto-mounting Veracrypt volumes easier. Other people like to keep it more hidden and to not give it a file extension. We're going to go ahead and give it a file extension. Frankly, having done computer investigations for most of my career, I can say the fairly easy to detect encrypted volumes that are encrypted files that are sitting out there through things called entropy tests. So I'd go ahead and tell it to give it that HC extension just so it's easier to find. You can then choose save. You're going to notice it's going to place that location up here. You're going to choose next. Now you get to choose what type of encryption. And you'll notice it has a whole range of encryption types that you can use. I simply like AES. It's a very robust encryption program. And we're going to leave it set at the default, which is SHA 512. This is very, very robust encryption. So we're going to choose next. Now, we're going to choose what size we're going to make this. You can make it as large or as small as you want to. I would probably keep it in the gigabyte range. About the largest I've ever created is about 100 gig, but that was work-related stuff. I would probably stay in the 1 to 10 gig range. That's because that's the sizes that I have found that I use more common. So on this one, I'm simply going to choose 1 gigabyte. You can make a terabyte size file here. Bear in mind, it's not going to let you make anything that would fill up your entire hard drives. You know, this size right here would be that's the maximum amount of free space on my C drive, which is where it's pointed to. There is an E drive on this computer, so you could have chosen to put it on the E drive, and that may or may not have more space than this one. So you're simply going to put 1. You could put 10. You could put 100. It will take more time to create this file the bigger it is, and it's going to, whether you place anything inside of it or not, it's going to take up a bunch of space on your computer system. So I would simply leave it at 1. And now it's the time to put your password in here. I'm going to use a really secure password called Password. I would recommend using uppercase, lowercase, special characters, and at least 25 characters. So for instance, and I would use a passphrase and just leave the spaces in there because spaces will count as special characters. For example, if you said a good password may be parentheses, I love the Atlanta Braves, exclamation point, parentheses. That would be a very robust, extremely difficult to crack password, and it's fairly long. And you could just add, it could be I love my mom, her name is Betty, or something like that. That would be a very robust password. You could also use key files that would require the files to also be present in order to open this. So if you're going to do some scripting, key files would be something that you could potentially use. So you'll notice here I've chosen a password. It's password 111. And I'm just going to save this in a file. There's my password. That's not something you would want to use, but I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. Then you're going to choose next. And now what it's doing is it is picking up your mouse movements and it's using that as a random pool or random seed in order to do the encryption algorithm. So you could simply go through, and once it turns green, you're good to go ahead and press format. This is not going to format your entire hard drive. It's just going to format that file. Go over here and choose format. And now it's going to go through and do its thing. This is a fairly fast computer. Now it has created that volume. And you'll notice it tells you the volume's been created. If you can choose next or exit. Some people get very confused about this. I would just choose exit at this point. If you choose next, it's going to let you create an additional encrypted container. So I've seen people create a bunch of these in series. not realizing that it's an infinite loop. It's always going to take you back to create this, so you just click cancel. Now the next step is to choose that file that you just created. So we're going to come over here and we're going to look at Documents, Veracrypt, and there is that secured file. I'm going to choose Open, and I'm going to click the V volume, meaning when it mounts this on my hard drive for Windows, it's going to call it the V volume. So you'll notice here, it's users, my name. I have OneDrive installed, so it's going to also stick this up in the cloud. Secured. Now you simply click Mount, and it's going to ask you for the password. So I'm going to come over here and copy and paste this password. Again, right over to here. And say Open. This might take a little bit of time, especially if you have a very large volume that you've created, something on the order of 100 gig or better. It could take a little bit of time to open. Now if you come down to Windows File Explorer, you're going to notice you have a V drive on there. And so now inside the V drive, you could place anything you wanted to. So you could say, for instance, if you had a Word document that's called my and so inside of this file you might have like, this is my SSN, this is my DOB, and you would save whatever confidential information you wanted to keep hidden inside of this file. And now it is secured by Veracrypt. So you're going to notice it's the V drive. So once you close this, now it's open. You can still use it, but now you want to close it and make it so that it's not readable to anyone on the file system. So you simply say dismount. If you come back over here, Documents, Veracrypt, you notice this file here called Secure. You can double click on it. Windows doesn't know what to do with it because it can't read it. So the file itself, click Properties. You'll notice it's a 1 gig file. It was created today, and I called it secure. This is the location that it's in, and nobody's going to be able to get inside this file. But now, in order to open it back up again, you notice it's already in here. You might have had a whole bunch of these files in here. Go over here, choose Secured again, Mount, come back over, insert the password. Again, we're going to give it a minute. You saw there was no V drive on here before. Now the V drive is back. There's your confidential information. So all this data is secured. Nobody's going to be able to get into it. And then when you want to dismount it, you come over here and say dismount. And now, again, you go back over. You look, there's no V drive. So there's no chance of somebody coming in and reading the data. So I hope you really got a lot out of this. Like I said, I have found creating these encrypted files that mount up as volumes, it's great for moving data on thumb drives between a Windows computer, a Mac computer. Obviously, if you're running this on Mac, you're going to have Veracrypt installed. So some people just put the installers on the USB thumb drive, which is what I would recommend doing, right beside the encrypted file, and there you go. So as long as people do not get the actual encryption password that you use, the file should be secure as long as the password is secure. If you write down the password somewhere else and they get a hold of it, they're going to be able to get in. So don't ever write your passwords down or store them inside a password vault so that only you have access to it. So thanks for listening to prepare911.com. I hope this helps people out and helps you store secure information and keep your data secure. Thanks for watching. Come over to our website for more tips, tricks, and tutorials. Have a great day. Until next time.